We're into week 2 of the budget and the frenzy shows no signs of dying down. The way the budget is being painted, you'd think that Joe Hockey was the reincarnation of Attila the Hun, whacking and slashing, cutting deeply. And we saw an interesting contrast this week between that characterisation of Joe Hockey and pretty calm words coming out of his Treasury Secretary, Martin Parkinson, and also from the Reserve Bank, explaining the brutal reality of our situation. Parkinson made it very clear that the job had to be done. We had to embark on repairing the budget and getting that budget back towards balance. And it's going to be a fairly slow process. We're talking 4 to 5 years before the budget approaches balance, and that's if everything goes right. And obviously if they get everything through the Senate. And the Reserve Bank minutes came out explaining what it did at its last meeting. Now, those minutes were in essence unremarkable. They told us what we already knew, that the Reserve Bank is going to leave the interest rate unchanged pretty much for the foreseeable future, at least for the next 3 months. It'll look at the next inflation figures, and then after that, it's entirely likely that it could remain unchanged for a few months after that. But what I think has become rather interesting now is this growing perception that there's no certainty that the rate move, when it comes, will be up. It's just a case of when, but rates will be going up. There's now a little bit of a thought that maybe rates could actually go down when they finally be changed because of an economy that's underperforming. And the big question on that front is really going to be what happens in China. But what made the release of the minutes anything but unremarkable was that they coincided with a speech from one of the top guys at the Reserve Bank, Assistant Governor Guy Debelle, and what he was saying was that the dollar would fall, that the inevitable reality of what was happening to our end of our resources construction boom, when the capital inflow that had constructed those projects started to fall away, that would reduce capital inflow and that would put downward pressure on the A-dollar. Yes, you'd get some pickup in terms of export income, but it wouldn't be enough to cover that gap, and that inevitably would lead to a dollar fall. The combination of the minutes coming out and that speech knocked a full cent off the dollar, and it really spent the week struggling to stay above 92 cents. As I said, the big issue is the iron ore price. We saw it go below $100 this week, and there's a great deal of uncertainty about where it will go from now on. There's again a sort of a general assumption that it's not going to fall dramatically. It's not going to go back to the $80 at which it started to pressure companies like Fortescue, our number 3 iron ore miner, and would certainly wreak havoc with all the smaller miners. That price, $80, BHP and Rio would still be making a reasonable profit. But again, just as I say, that expectation that interest rates have to rise when they eventually change, the expectation that the iron ore price simply can't go down to $80 or low. Why? Well, just because it would be uncomfortable. That becomes the central question mark going forward. We saw some statistics out of China this week which were looking better, but again, we'll see these statistics jump around over succeeding months. We really don't know where China is heading over the course of the next year, far less over the next 2 to 3 years. We also saw Telstra this week behaving like a frisky startup, not like some staid old establishment telco company, when it announced it was going to embark on creating a second wireless mobile broadband network. How was it going to do this? It was going to use the home phones and the modems of its customers across Australia to create a virtual network which would span Australia. Now, obviously, there's a lot of question marks over how this would go and whether it would be able to be done. But I thought it was very interesting because, in essence, what Telstra was doing was to say the taxpayer is spending $40 billion, $60 billion, who knows how much to build the NBN, the National Broadband Network. We will then use the National Broadband Network by spending only $100 million to turn it into our second mobile network. It's a fantastic idea. It's extraordinary if Telstra can pull it off. And obviously it's not going to happen immediately. But it's a very interesting development which shows that Telstra has got some real dynamism in it. And later in the week, David Thodey, the CEO, was telling us that he was really looking into an Asian growth strategy as well. So very interesting developments around Telstra.